Think your pocket change is worthless? Think again, because these Washington quarters could secretly be hiding serious collector value. And some of them might be worth far more than 25 cents. So before you spend your next quarter, check the date, inspect both sides, and look carefully for errors, condition, and shine. Because one small coin hiding in your pocket, coin jar, or old collection could turn out to be a valuable treasure collectors have been hunting for years. Because there are several examples of Washington quarters that have sold for big money. While most Washington quarters are worth only their silver content or face value, specific key dates, Heegred specimens, and unique minting errors are highly sought after by collectors worldwide. Yes, here are the most notable examples of valuable Washington quarters. The 1932 Denver D and San Francisco S quarters are the holy grails of the Washington series, due to their very low mintage numbers during the Great Depression. These two sold for very big money that really inspired you that these quarters could be worth millions. In 2008, a 1932 D Washington quarter in MS-66 condition sold for $143,750. And in 2020, a 1932S example in MS-66 sold for $45,000. Some rare mint errors and varieties in Washington quarters are also valuable. For example, a 1970S proof quarter mistakenly struck over a 1941 Canadian quarter is one of the most famous and valuable, valued at around $35,000. And when the U.S. Mint switched from silver to clad copper nickel in 1965, a few 1965 quarters were mistakenly struck on 90% silver planchettes. These are valued between $4,000 and $7,000. Even high-grade modern quarters can sell for big money if they are in nearly perfect condition graded MS-67 or higher, as they are hard to find in that condition. A 1965 MS-67 Plus clad quarter in exceptional condition sold for $12,500. In 2005, and due to a lack of official mint sets in 1982, finding a high-grade 1982 quarter is rare. An MS-68 example sold for $10,200. 2019 Washington quarter, the first quarters to feature the West Point W mint mark and released into circulation, which can command premiums in high grades. Some key factors for high value are A. Gem or mint state. MS grade means the coin has no signs of wear. Mint marks. Look for D. Denver or S. San Francisco on the back, pre-1968, or front post 1968. And today, we're revealing 5 of the most wanted quarters from the late 60s and early 70s that could turn your everyday change into a small fortune. So before you spend your next quarter, watch this video till the end, because the next coin you check could change everything. What if I told you that hiding somewhere in ordinary pocket change, the kind you toss onto your nightstand without a second glance, there exists a quarter so controversial, so historically explosive, and so devastatingly rare in its finest forms that serious collectors have paid jaw-dropping, eye-watering sums just to hold one in their hands? What if I told you that a single date stamped on a humble 25-cent piece unleashed one of the most seismic upheavals in the entire history of American coinage? A moment so scandalous that it permanently divided coin collectors into two camps, those who witnessed it in real time and those who still cannot believe it actually happened. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are ripping open the full, shocking, and utterly electrifying story of the 1965 Washington quarter, the coin that the United States government tried to use to quietly bury one of the most catastrophic monetary decisions in modern history, and the coin that, decades later, is sending auction rooms into an absolute frenzy. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear will completely change how you look at the quarters sitting in your wallet right now. To understand why the 1965 Washington quarter is so profoundly significant and why its rarest survivors command the kind of respect and money normally reserved for ancient treasures, you have to go back to the crisis that created it. By the early 1960s, the United States was staring down a disaster hiding in plain sight. Silver, the metal that had given American coinage its gleaming, ringing dignity since the days of the Founding Fathers, was vanishing at an alarming, almost terrifying rate. Precious metal prices were surging, and the intrinsic value of silver coins was rapidly catching up to, and in some cases, exceeding their face value. Ordinary citizens and industrial hoarders alike were snatching quarters and dimes out of circulation by the millions, melting them down, or simply squirreling them away. Because suddenly, a 35-cent piece of silver was worth more than the 35 cents stamped on the coin. The United States Mint was hemorrhaging silver. Congress was in a panic. And then came the decision that would shatter a 173-year tradition and shake coin collectors to their absolute core. The Coinage Act of 1965, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, on July 23, 1965, was the bombshell that nobody in the numismatic world saw coming with the full force it ultimately delivered. With the stroke of a pen, silver was stripped from the quarter entirely, gone, eliminated. The new 1965 Washington quarter would be struck in a clad composition, a copper core sandwiched between an outer layer of copper nickel, giving the coin a surface that looked superficially similar to silver but rang with a dull, hollow thud instead of the beautiful, crystalline chime that generations of Americans had grown up hearing. Johnson himself, in a breathtaking display of spin that collectors still talk about today, declared that these new coins would be just as good as silver, a statement that numismatists received with barely concealed outrage. To add insult to injury, the Mint made 3 decisions that year that would permanently mark 1965 as one of the most controversial years in American coin history. No mint marks were placed on any coins, no proof sets were issued in the traditional format, and the Mint ramped up production to absolutely staggering levels in a desperate attempt to flood the market and break the hoarding crisis. The result? The 1965 Washington quarter was struck in numbers that would make your head spin, a combined production figure across Philadelphia and other facilities of over 1 billion pieces. 1 billion quarters, all stripped of their silver soul, all dumped into circulation as fast as humanly possible, and all bearing none of the mint marks that collectors had relied upon for decades to track and document the Mint's output. It was, by any measure, one of the most dramatic singular transformations in the history of the United States coinage, and yet, and here is where the story takes a turn that even veteran collectors find genuinely stunning. The 1965 Washington quarter is not simply a common forgettable coin that historians dismiss with a shrug, because lurking within that ocean of a billion-clad quarters are secrets, errors, and survival stories that have turned this coin into one of the most obsessively studied issues of the entire modern era. The most electrifying of all, the coin that makes every serious numismatist's pulse quicken, is the 1965 Washington quarter, struck on a 90% silver plate. These pieces exist because in the chaos and breakneck urgency of transitioning to the new clad coinage, a small number of leftover silver planchettes found their way into the presses and were struck with the 1965 dies. The result is a coin that looks, on the surface, like any other 1965 quarter, but which rings with that unmistakable silver chime, weighs in at the silver standard of 6.25 grams rather than the clad standard of 5.67 grams, and represents one of the most startling transitional errors in all of 20th century American amusement. When one of these silver and clad survivors surfaces at heritage auctions or Stack's Bowers, the collector community takes notice in a very serious way, and the prices realized reflect the extraordinary rarity and historical drama these pieces embody. The authentication process is rigorous. PCGS and NGC both subject these coins to intensive scrutiny, but a confirmed 1965 Washington quarter on a silver planchette, certified and graded by one of those 2 industry tie-ins, is the kind of coin that generates genuine bidding wars from the most advanced collectors on the planet beyond the silver transitional errors. The 1965 Washington quarter rewards patient, eagle-eyed collectors in other ways that the casual observer would entirely miss. Because mint marks were suppressed that year, a deliberate policy that the Mint hoped would discourage the kind of date and mint mark collecting that had contributed to hoarding. The die varieties and double die specimens of the 1965 quarter have become an entire cottage industry of study unto themselves. Certain double die obverse specimens, where Washington's portrait or the date shows a telltale doubling under magnification, have been documented and cataloged by specialists, and the finest known examples carry premiums that would shock anyone who assumed a billion coin mintage meant nothing interesting could survive. The striking quality of 1965 quarters also varies dramatically. Some pieces show weakly struck details, the result of the Mint prioritizing raw production speed over quality, while others, struck with care and surviving in pristine condition, emerge as genuinely spectacular coins with brilliant surfaces and razor-sharp devices. In PCGS or NGC holders graded MS67 or above, the 1965 Washington quarter becomes a legitimately scarce and highly desirable coin, because the combination of mass production, rough handling and circulation, and decades of time means that truly gem-quality survivors are vastly rarer than the billion-coin mintage would ever lead you to believe. A PCG SMS67 example of the 1965 Washington quarter is not a coin you simply stumble across. It is a coin that serious registry set collectors actively hunt, and when one appears in a major auction, it commands attention and dollars that would astound the average person picking up a quarter to buy a Gumbalth collector community's relationship with the 1965 Washington quarter. has evolved in fascinating ways over the decades since that traumatic transition year. In the immediate aftermath of 1965, many traditional collectors, the purists who had grown up revering the 90% silver composition as a fundamental, non-negotiable aspect of American coinage, turned their backs on the new clad series in disgust, dismissing these coins as cheap, soulless substitutes unworthy of serious attention. But time has a remarkable way of rewriting those initial judgments. And what the numismatic world has gradually come to appreciate is that the 1965 Washington quarter is not just a coin, it is a document, an artifact of one of the most wrenching economic and political decisions in American monetary history. Every single 1965 quarter that exists is a witness to the moment in the United States permanently severed its coinage from precious metal, ending a tradition that stretched back to the Coinage Act of 1792. That is not a footnote, that is history, etched in chemical, and collectors who understand that context approach these coins with a reverence that goes far beyond their face value. The major grading services have certified thousands of 1965 Washington quarters across the full spectrum of grades, and the population reports tell a story that is both sobering and exciting. While lower-grade circulated examples are genuinely common, the upper reaches of the grading scale thin out dramatically, and the populations of coins, graded MIs-67 and above, are surprisingly, sometimes shockingly, small for an issue with such an enormous original mintage. So what does all of this mean for you, the viewer watching right now? Possibly holding a Washington quarter in your hand, or wondering whether the ones you have encountered over the years deserve a second look. It means that this coin, perhaps more than almost any other 20th century quarter, rewards careful examination, thoughtful research, and the kind of attention that most people never think to give to a piece of pocket change. It means that if you ever encounter a 1965 quarter that seems slightly heavier than usual, rings with a different sound, or simply strikes you as unusual in some way, you owe it to yourself to have it checked by a professional, because the difference between a common clad quarter and a genuine 1965s. The 1966 Washington quarter, the coin that broke all the rules and is worth more than you ever imagine. What if I told you that sitting in an old coin jar, tucked away in a dusty drawer, or buried inside a forgotten piggy bank, there might be a single quarter, a plain, ordinary-looking Washington quarter dated 1966, that could be worth hundreds, thousands, or in the most jaw-dropping cases, tens of thousands of dollars to the right collector? That's not a fantasy, that's not clickbait, and that is absolutely not an exaggeration, because the 1966 Washington quarter is one of the most fascinating, historically explosive, and wildly misunderstood coins in the entire history of United States coinage. And today, we are going to tear open every shocking secret this coin has been hiding. Let's start at the very beginning. Because to truly understand why this quarter matters, why collectors lose their minds over certain examples of it, you need to understand the catastrophic, almost unbelievable crisis that was tearing apart the entire American monetary system just years before this coin was ever struck. By the early 1960s, the United States was sitting on a financial powder keg, silver, the same precious metal that had given American coins their glorious weight and luster for over a century, was becoming dangerously more valuable than the face value of the coins themselves. People weren't spending their quarters, they were hoarding them, melting them, stripping the silver right out of circulation, and sending the entire coin supply into a death spiral. Vending machines jammed, cash registers ran dry, and the government watched in absolute horror as billions of coins simply vanished from everyday commerce. Congress was forced to act, and in 1965, they passed the Coinage Act, a seismic, institution-shaking law that did something that would have been considered heresy just a generation earlier. It stripped silver completely out of dimes and quarters, replacing the beloved silver composition with a clad sandwich of copper and nickel that collectors immediately and contemptuously nicknamed Johnson's Sandwich after President Lyndon B. Johnson. The 1966 Washington quarter was born directly out of this financial firestorm, and it carries the scars and the glory of that transformation in every single layer of its metal. Now, here is where the story gets even more explosive. Because 1966 wasn't just any year in this transition. It was a year defined by chaos at the United States Mint, to flood the market with desperately needed coins as fast as humanly possible. The Mint made a decision that collectors still talk about in hushed, reverent tones today. They suspended mint marks entirely. That's right, no D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, nothing. Every single quarter struck in 1966, regardless of which mint facility produced it, rolled off the presses completely bare and anonymous. And that decision has created a numismatic puzzle that experts are still unraveling decades later. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint. and even the San Francisco Mint all churned out 1966 quarters at a breakneck pace. Yet today there is no simple way to tell them apart from their mint marks alone. And that mystery adds an absolutely electric layer of intrigue to every single 1966 quarter you hold in your hand. The total mintage for 1966 Washington quarters came in at a staggering 821,101,500. Over 800 million coins, which sounds, on the surface, like a number that should make any coin utterly worthless and common. But here is the truth. That separates casual observers from serious collectors. Mintage is only half the story, and in many ways it is the less important half. What truly determines the value of a 1966 Washington quarter is its condition. And this is where the conversation transforms from interesting to absolutely breathtaking. The vast majority of those 821 million quarters were immediately thrown into circulation, passed from hand to hand, spun across countertops, dropped into parking meters, and subjected to the brutal, grinding punishment of everyday American commerce. Decades of that kind of abuse leaves coins worn, scratched, and scarred beyond recognition. And a circulated 1966 Washington quarter in poor or even fine condition might fetch only its face value, or perhaps $1 or $2 at best. But, and this is the part that should make every single person watching this video sprint to check their coin collections. Right now, the 1966 quarters that survived in pristine, uncirculated mint state condition are an entirely different animal altogether. A 1966 Washington quarter graded MS65 by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected and authoritative grading services on the planet, can command prices of $30 to $100 or more, and as the grade climbs higher, the value explodes in ways that are genuinely shocking. In MS67, that rarefied near-perfect territory where coins look as though they just rolled off the mint press 5 seconds ago, a 1966 Washington quarter can sell for $200, $300, $500, or beyond, depending on the specific strike quality and surface preservation. And then there are the truly extraordinary specimens, the ones that even seasoned numismatists stare at in disbelief. The coins graded MS67 Plus, or those with exceptional full details strikes, where every feather on Washington's hair is razor sharp. Every leaf in the Eagle's design pops with three-dimensional clarity. Those coins have traded hands at Heritage auctions and stacks, Bowers for prices that would make your jaw hit the floor. But wait, because we haven't even gotten to the most electrifying chapter in the entire 1966 Washington quarter story, the era coins. Because in 1966, during all that frantic pressure cooker production, mistakes happened, and those mistakes, those gorgeous, valuable, mistakes, are the coins that transform a simple quarter into a treasure. One of the most notorious and sought-after errors is the 1966 SMS Special Mint Set, Washington quarter coins, that were struck with special dies for collector sets during this transition era, produced to a higher standard than regular business strikes, but with a unique, almost satiny finish that is immediately recognizable to trained eyes. These SMS coins in top grades are exceptionally scarce, and a pristine SMS example graded SP67 or higher by NGC or PCGS can sell for prices that dwarf the already impressive circulation quality pieces. Beyond the SMS coins, collectors hunt with obsessive intensity for double die errors on 1966 quarters. Coins where a misalignment in the die setting process caused letters, numbers, or design elements to appear doubled, creating a ghost-like doubling effect that is absolutely unmistakable. Under magnification, a strong double die 1966 Washington quarter is the kind of discovery that collectors describe as life-changing. And when one surfaces at a major auction house, the bidding can escalate with a ferocity that stuns even veteran dealers. Then there are the off-center strikes, the broad trickster coins, struck on wrong planchets in 1966. With the mint operating at a pace that bordered on controlled insanity, the opportunities for mechanical errors were everywhere, and every one of those errors that survived undetected represents a tiny numismatic miracle waiting to be found in the right collection. The history embedded in this coin goes far deeper than production, statistics, and auction records. Though, because the 1966 Washington quarter was striking a portrait that had itself been revolutionary when it first appeared in 1932. A likeness of George Washington, father of the nation, sculpted by John Flanagan based on a famous 1786 bust by John Antoine Udanga, a portrait so dignified, so powerful, so unmistakably American that it has endured on the quarter for nearly a century, without serious challenge. On the reverse, the majestic heraldic eagle spreading its wings in triumph, clutching arrows and an olive branch, the eternal symbols of American military might paired with the nation's deep hunger for peace, Every element of this design was chosen with deliberate, almost reverent intention, and even in the degraded, silver-stripped clad version of 1966. Those design elements carry the full weight of American history and aspiration. For collectors, building serious sets of Washington quarters. The 1966 is a coin that demands respect and commands attention. Red Street set collectors at PCGS and NGC compete with white-knuckled intensity for the finest known examples. Knowing that a single grade point difference between an MS67 and an MS67 Plus can mean the difference between a coin worth a few $100s and one worth several thousand. The coin show circuit buzzes every time a Top Pop 1966 quarter surfaces. Top Pop being the collector's term for the single finest graded example of a particular coin in existence. Because owning the finest known specimen of any United States coin, even one with a mintage in the hundreds of millions, carries a prestige that the most devoted numismatists will pay extraordinary premiums to possess. The broader numismatic community has also come to appreciate the 1966 Washington quarter as a pivotal artifact of American monetary history. A coin that marks the precise moment the United States abandoned its centuries-old commitment to silver coinage and stepped into the modern era of base metal currency. When you hold a 1966 quarter, you are holding a piece of that seismic transition, a tiny metallic record of the economic pressures, political decisions, and industrial heroics that reshaped the American monetary landscape forever. That historical significance, that context, is something that no mintage figure can diminish, and no grade alone can fully capture. What if I told you that tucked away in a dusty jar of pocket change, forgotten in an attic, or casually spent at a gas station, there exists a coin so breathtakingly scarce, so jaw-droppingly valuable, that collectors across the entire world have been hunting it with obsessive, relentless desperation for decades, and that coin is the 1967 Washington quarter, a piece of American numismatic history so shrouded in mystery, so packed with staggering unction records, and so explosively misunderstood by the general public, that even seasoned coin experts have been left absolutely speechless when the right specimen crosses their hands. That's exactly what we're diving into today. And I promise you, by the time this video ends, you are going to look at every single quarter in your pocket with completely different eyes. Because the 1967 Washington quarter is not just a coin, it is a time capsule of one of the most turbulent, controversial, and transformative eras in United States mint history, and its story is one that will blow your mind. Let's start with the explosive context that gave birth to this coin. Because 1967 was no ordinary year for American coinage, it was a year of absolute crisis. A year when the United States Mint was under crushing, suffocating pressure, unlike anything it had experienced in modern times. And the reason for that chaos was the great silver coin hoarding crisis of the mid-1960s. A nationwide frenzy that sent shockwaves through the entire financial system when the American public began hoarding silver coins by the billions. The moment the government announced it was removing silver from circulation, stripping dimes and quarters of the precious metal that collectors and ordinary citizens alike had trusted for generations. And this explosive act of monetary transformation meant that 1967 was the very first full year that Washington quarters were struck entirely in the new copper-nickel-clad composition. Not a single drop of silver, not a single trace of the precious metal that had defined the quarter since 1932, which makes the 1967 issue a coin that stands at the absolute crossroads of American monetary history. A coin that marks the permanent, irreversible end of an era that will never return. Now here is where the story gets truly electrifying, because the United States Mint, desperate to flood the market with new clad coins and break the back of the hoarding crisis once and for all, made a decision that has haunted collectors and numismatists ever since. In 1967, the Mint eliminated mint marks entirely from all coinage, which means that every single 1967 Washington quarter you encounter, whether it rolled off the presses in Philadelphia or Denver, carries absolutely no mint mark, no identifying letter, no clue whatsoever about where it was born, creating a numismatic mystery that drives collectors absolutely wild and makes the attribution of specific specimens to specific mint facilities essentially impossible without the most advanced metallurgical testing, a decision so controversial, so maddening to serious collectors, that it has been debated furiously in circles for more than half a century and remains one of the most hotly contested policy choices in the entire history of American coinage. But wait, because the mint mark story is not even the most shocking thing about the 1967 Washington quarter. Not by a long shot. because lurking within the hundreds of millions of 1967 quarters that poured out of the Philadelphia and Denver mints that year are some of the most spectacular, most sought after, most financially devastating era coins that the numismatic world has ever seen. And chief among them, the era that sends serious collectors into an absolute frenzy of excitement, is the 1967 Washington Quarter doubled die coin, so strikingly, so undeniably dramatic in its doubling that when you hold one under a loupe for the first time, your hands will literally shake, because the doubling on the obverse, particularly visible in the lettering, in the date, in the majestic profile of George Washington himself, is not some subtle squint and you might see it variety. It is bold, it is dramatic. It is the kind of error that makes even the most composed, most experienced numismatists at heritage auctions and Stack's Bowers break into enormous smiles the moment they lay eyes on it, and certified examples of this variety graded by PCGS and NGC have commanded prices in the hundreds of dollars even in circulated grades, with pristine gem-quality specimens exploding past price expectations at major auction events, to the absolute astonishment of everyone in the room. And then there is the matter of the 1967 special mint set coins. Oh! This is where things get truly, outrageously exciting, because the United States Mint, having suspended the production of traditional proof coins in 1965, 1966, and 1967, instead produced special mint sets as a premium collector offering, and the 1967 SMS Washington quarters struck within these sets are a completely different beast from their circulation counterparts. Coins struck with such extraordinary care, such meticulous attention to detail, that the finest examples exhibit surfaces of breathtaking, almost mirror-like quality, and the holy grail among all 1967 SMEs, Washington Quarters, the coin that makes every serious collector's jaw drop clean to the floor. This is the 1967 SMS Washington Quarter graded SP68 by PCGS or NGC, a designation so astronomically rare, so vanishingly difficult to achieve, that only a handful of specimens have ever been awarded this grade in the entire history of third-party coin certification. And when one of these extraordinary coin surfaces at a major auction house, like Heritage Auctions, when it crosses the auction block with that elite SP68 designation glowing on its PCGS or NGC label, the bidding war that erupts is nothing short of spectacular, with final hammer prices that have stunned even the most experienced auction professionals and left winning bidders trembling with excitement at having secured one of the rarest, most coveted Washington Quarter specimens in existence. The collector community's obsession with the 1967 Washington Quarter runs extraordinarily deep, fueled by the coin's historical significance, its stunning variety landscape, and the sheer thrill of the hunt. Because the reality that hundreds of millions of these coins entered in circulation means that extraordinary specimens, the doubled dies, the full strike SMS pieces, the freakish mint errors with dramatic die cracks and cuds and off-center strikes, were scattered to the four winds of commerce, slipping into collections and coin jars and cash registers across America, waiting patiently for the sharp-eyed, obsessively dedicated collector who knows exactly what to look for and refuses to stop searching until they find it. And that combination of widespread distribution and spectacular hidden treasures is precisely what makes the 1967 Washington Quarter one of the most addictive and most endlessly rewarding dates in the entire Washington Quarter. Series 4 collectors at every level of experience and expertise. The population reports maintained by PCGS and NGC tell an absolutely fascinating story about the 1967 Washington Quarter's rarity landscape, because while circulated examples are common enough, the numbers thin out with shocking speed as grades climb into mint state territory, and by the time you reach MS66, MS67, and beyond, you are looking at population figures so small, so devastatingly limited, that the certified coins at these elite grades represent genuinely scarce numismatic treasures, coins that collectors have chased for years, decades even, waiting for the perfect example to emerge from a collection, to surface at a Stack's Bowers sale, to appear in a Heritage Auctions catalog with a grade that makes every serious Washington Quarter specialist in the country reach simultaneously for their bidding paddle. And the auction records for these top-graded pieces are the stuff of numismatic legend, records that prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that the 1967 Washington Quarter, so casually dismissed by the uninformed as just another common-clad coin from a common year, is in the right grade, in the right variety, with the right certification, one of the most financially explosive, most collector-coveted quarters of the entire 20th century. So the next time you reach into your pocket, the next time you sort through a coin jar, the next time you find yourself staring at a Washington Quarter from 1967, I want you to pause. I want you to really look at it, because you might be holding a coin worth far more than 25 cents. You might be holding a piece of American monetary history at its most dramatic and transformative. You might even be holding one of those spectacular rarities that collectors dream about. And if this video has ignited that fire of new curiosity inside you, if you want to go deeper, learn more, and keep discovering the hidden treasures lurking inside American coinage, then smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a single video, and drop a comment below telling me the most valuable coin you have ever personally discovered. Because this community of passionate collectors is one of the greatest in the world, and I cannot wait to read every single one of your stories. In a world where ordinary pocket change can secretly be worth a fortune, one coin stands out as a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. The mysterious, fascinating, and sometimes shockingly valuable 1972 Washington quarter, a coin that millions of people have handled without ever realizing its true potential, a coin that may be sitting right now in your drawer, your wallet, or even lost in an old jar, quietly waiting to change your life forever. And today we are diving deep into the incredible history, mind-blowing rarity, and jaw-dropping auction stories of this iconic piece of American coinage. Because what you are about to hear might completely change the way you look at coins forever. The 1972 Washington quarter was minted during a time of economic change and cultural shifts in the United States, continuing the long-running Washington quarter series that first began in 1932 to honor the first president of the United States. And while most people assume that coins from the 1970s are common and worthless, the truth is far more exciting and surprising, because hidden among the millions of these quarters are rare variations, minting errors, and high-grade specimens that collectors are willing to pay shocking amounts of money for, sometimes hundreds, even thousands of dollars for a single coin that originally had a value of just 25 cents. Imagine that, turning a simple quarter into a small fortune. And it all comes down to understanding what makes certain 1972 Washington quarters so special. First, let's talk about the mints, because the 1972 quarter was produced at 3 major U.S. mint locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each with its own unique characteristics. Philadelphia coins typically have no mint mark. Denver coins carry a small D, and San Francisco coins, often struck as proofs, display an S. And while millions upon millions of these coins were produced, not all are created equal, far from it, because collectors are obsessed with condition, rarity, and uniqueness. And that's where things start to get truly exciting. Coins in average circulated condition might still only be worth face value, but when you step into the world of uncirculated coins, brilliant luster, sharp details, and flawless surfaces, the value begins to climb. And when you reach the highest grades, known as MS65, MS66, or even MS67, the prices can skyrocket into levels that most people would never expect from a coin of this era. But that's just the beginning, because the real magic happens when we talk about errors and rare varieties. Yes, errors, those accidental mistakes, made during the minting process that turn ordinary coins into extraordinary collectibles. And the 1972 Washington quarter has its fair share of these fascinating anomalies, including double dies, off-center strikes, and even coins struck on the wrong planchet. Each of these errors tells a story of a moment when something went slightly wrong at the mint, creating a one-of-a-kind piece that collectors are desperate to own. And when such coins appear at auction, the bidding wars can become intense, emotional, and absolutely thrilling, with prices climbing far beyond expectations as collectors compete for ownership of these rare treasures. And speaking of auctions, there have been instances where high-grade or error 1972 quarters have sold for astonishing amounts, shocking even seasoned collectors who thought they had seen it all. Because in the world of numismatics, rarity combined with demand creates explosive value, and the 1972 quarter sits right at that intersection for certain key specimens. Now let's talk about proof coins, because the San Francisco Mint produced stunning proof versions of the 1972 quarter, coins that were never intended for circulation, but instead crafted with extraordinary care, featuring mirror-like surfaces and razor-sharp details. These coins were sold to collectors and often preserved in pristine condition. But even among proof coins, there are levels of quality, and the finest examples, graded PR69 or PR70, can command impressive prices, especially when they are free from blemishes and retain their original brilliance. And here's where things get even more exciting, because some proof coins also exhibit cameo or deep cameo contrast, where the design appears frosted against a mirrored background, creating a stunning visual effect that collectors absolutely love. And this contrast can significantly increase the value of a coin, turning an already desirable piece into something truly spectacular. Now imagine discovering such a coin in an old collection or inherited box of coins. The thrill, the excitement, the realization that you might be holding something incredibly valuable. It's a feeling that drives collectors around the world, constantly searching, examining, and hoping to uncover the next hidden gem. And that's why the 1972 Washington Quarter continues to captivate attention. Because despite its age and relatively high mintage, it still holds secrets waiting to be discovered. Secrets that could potentially lead to life-changing finds, and let's not forget the role of grading services. Because professional grading can make a massive difference in value. Coins that are authenticated and graded by reputable organizations gain credibility and trust in the market, often selling for significantly higher prices than raw, ungraded coins. And this is especially important for high-grade or error coins, where even a small difference in condition can mean hundreds or thousands of dollars in value. So if you believe you have a special 1972 quarter, getting it professionally evaluated could be one of the smartest moves you ever make. Now let's dive into the psychology of collectors. Because understanding why people are willing to pay so much for these coins adds another layer of fascination. Collectors are driven by passion, history, and the thrill of the hunt. They are not just buying coins, they are buying stories, connections to the past, and pieces of art that have survived decades. And when a rare 1972 quarter appears, especially one with a unique error or exceptional grade, it becomes more than just a coin, it becomes a prize. A symbol of achievement, and sometimes even a status item within the collecting community. And this intense demand is what fuels the high prices we see at auctions, creating moments of excitement and drama that rival any major event. Now, here's something truly shocking. Many valuable coins are still out there in circulation or hidden in old collections, meaning that anyone, yes, anyone, could potentially find one. You don't need to be a professional numismatist, you just need curiosity, patience, and a keen eye for detail. Start by checking your change, looking closely at dates, mint marks, and overall condition, because you never know what you might find. And that's the beauty of coin collecting. It turns everyday objects into opportunities for discovery, transforming ordinary moments into thrilling adventures, and the 1972 Washington Quarter is a perfect example of this phenomenon. A coin that might seem ordinary at first glance, but holds the potential for extraordinary value under the right circumstances. So the next time you come across a quarter, don't just spend it without a second thought. Take a closer look. Examine it carefully, because it might just be one of those rare, valuable pieces that collectors dream about. And who knows? That simple act of curiosity could lead to an incredible discovery, a story worth telling, and maybe even a financial reward that exceeds your wildest expectations. Because in the hidden world of coins, treasures are everywhere, waiting to be found. And the 1972 Washington Quarter stands as a shining reminder that sometimes the most valuable things are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to notice them. Asterisk, wait. Before you sell your 1972 Washington Quarter, you might be making a huge mistake that could cost you hundreds of dollars. Most people rush to sell their coins without knowing their true value, but smart collectors do the opposite. First, always, check your coin's condition. Is it shiny, uncirculated, or does it have sharp details? The better the condition, the more money you can get. Next, look for rare errors like double designs or off-center strikes, because these tiny mistakes can turn your quarter into a jackpot coin worth far more than 25 cents. Now, here's the secret. Never sell your coin without getting it graded by a professional service. A graded coin instantly gains trust and can sell for much higher prices. When it comes to selling, avoid quick cash deals. Instead, list your coin on trusted platforms like eBay, or send it to major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, where serious collectors compete and drive prices up. And don't forget, good photos and a strong description can attract more buyers and higher bids. The truth is, the difference between selling a coin for a few dollars and hundreds of dollars comes down to knowledge, patience, and strategy. So take your time, do it right, and turn that simple 1972 quarter into real profit. What if I told you that a single coin sitting completely unnoticed in your pocket change, hiding right there in the bottom of an old jar collecting dust on a forgotten shelf, could be worth not just a few dollars, not just $100, but potentially thousands of dollars to the right collector? And what makes this story even more jolting, even more absolutely earth-shattering, is that the coin in question is a 1973 Washington Quarter, a coin that most people have thrown into tip jars and vending machines without a second thought. A coin that the general public has dismissed as common pocket change for over 5 decades, yet within the secret and obsessive world of serious numismatics, the 1973 Washington Quarter conceals a hidden identity so complex, so riddled with breathtaking variety, and so shockingly misunderstood that even experienced collectors have walked past rare specimens without realizing. what was right in front of their eyes. So today we are going to rip open this coin's entire remarkable story, from its storied history and the artistry behind its legendary design, to the specific mint varieties that send collectors into an absolute frenzy, to the stunning auction results that prove beyond any doubt that the right 1973 Washington quarter is not pocket change but a genuine treasure. The Washington Quarter series itself carries one of the most fascinating and politically charged origin stories in all of American coinage history. Because when the United States Mint introduced this design in 1932, sculpted by the supremely gifted John Flanagan, whose classically inspired portrait of George Washington on the obverse remains one of the most recognizable and enduring images ever struck on an American coin, it was never supposed to be a permanent series at all. It was originally conceived as a one-year commemorative to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth, and yet the design proved so beloved, so overwhelmingly accepted by the American public and by the numismatic community, that it was simply never discontinued, evolving instead through decades of American history, surviving World War II, silver shortages, the devastating copper-nickel-clad transition of 1965, and countless design modifications, until by 1973, the Washington Quarter had accumulated over 40 years of numismatic legacy and collector devotion, making every single date and mint mark within this series an object of intense scrutiny and passionate pursuit. The 1973 Washington Quarter was struck at 3 facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and the shockingly important detail that most casual observers miss entirely is that the differences between these mint marks are not merely a matter of geography, but a matter of dramatically different collector value and rarity profiles. Because while the Philadelphia Mint struck a staggering 346,924,000 quarters in 1973, making the business strike Philadelphia coin one of the most abundant issues of the entire series, and while the Denver Mint added another breathtaking 232,977,400 coins to the nation's circulating coin supply, the San Francisco Mint took an entirely different and electrifying path, producing proof coins exclusively for collectors through its special mint sets and proof sets. And it is precisely these San Francisco proof coins that ignite the most ferocious passion among collectors today. Because A1973S Washington Quarter, graded PR7 OD-CAM by PCGS or NG, the absolute pinnacle of numismatic perfection. A coin with razor-sharp cameo contrast between its frosted devices and mirror-like fields. A coin where literally not a single contact mark, hairline, or imperfection exists anywhere on its flawless surfaces represents the rarest and most coveted state in which this issue can possibly exist. And when one of these perfect specimens crosses the auction block at Heritage Auctions or Stack's, Bowers, the bidding room goes electric, because collectors who have spent years hunting for that elusive perfect example know that opportunities this extraordinary do not come around twice. But before you dismiss your circulated 1973 Philadelphia or Denver quarters as worthless, you absolutely must understand something that could change everything about how you look at these coins. Because the era coin universe attached to the 1973 Washington Quarter is a landscape so wild, so unpredictable, is so explosively valuable that a single manufacturing mistake from the United States Mint can transform an otherwise common coin into a piece that commands prices most people would associate with rare gold coins rather than everyday clad quarters. And among the most sought-after and legitimate stunning errors documented for this date are the dramatic double die varieties, where the hubbing process during die production caused certain design elements, most critically, the date, the motto, "In God We Trust," in portions of Washington's portrait to appear unmistakably doubled to the naked eye, creating a ghostly, almost haunting visual effect that stops experienced collectors cold the moment they see it under a loupe. And a well-preserved example of a significant 1973 double-die quarter has sold for amounts that would make your head spin. Because the combination of eye-catching visual appeal and genuine numismatic rarity makes these era coins irresistible. 2. Advanced collectors who understand exactly what they are holding. The grading standards established by PCGS and NGC have been absolutely transformational in determining just how shockingly wide the value spread is within the 1973 Washington Quarter series. Because while an ungraded heavily circulated specimen might trade for face value, or just slightly above it, the price escalation as you climb the Sheldon scale is nothing short of breathtaking. ANMS 65 Full Strike Philadelphia, example certified by PCGS, might bring $20 to $30 in today's active market. An MS66 example pushes that number dramatically higher as the population of coins with truly pristine surfaces and full strikes to surprisingly small numbers. and by the time you reach the MS67 tier, a coin with eye-popping luster, perfect strike sharpness, and surfaces so clean that they look as though they were struck yesterday and never touched. By human hands, you are looking at a coin that is sold for hundreds of dollars. A coin so far removed from its humble origins as pocket change that new collectors literally cannot believe the same date and denomination can vary so wildly in price, based on condition alone. And this is precisely why the most obsessive and most financially successful Washington quarter collectors invest in professional grading immediately upon acquiring any coin they suspect might be a top-tier specimen. Because the difference between an MS66 and an MS67 is not just a single point. On an abstract scale, it is often the difference between a coin worth $50 and a coin worth $500. The collector base pursuing the 1973 Washington quarter is itself a fascinating and deeply passionate community, ranging from dedicated Washington quarter specialists who are building complete Dayton Mint Mark registry sets and who track every single population report update from PCGS and NGC with the kind of intensity normally reserved for financial markets, to advanced Aerocoin specialists who spend hours examining hundreds of coins under powerful magnification, hunting for the next undiscovered doubled die or repunched mint mark variety. Two-type collectors and first-time numismatists who are simply drawn to the elegance and historical weight of the Washington Quarter series. And it is the collective hunger of all these different collector types, converging simultaneously on the finest known specimens, that drives the auction results for key examples to levels that routinely shock outsiders who assumed they were dealing with a common modern coin, because the truth that experienced numismatists know, and that this video is here to shout from the rooftops, is that, in the world of coins, rarity is never simply about age. In 1973, Washington Quarter and MS67, certified by PCGS, is rarer in absolute terms than many 19th century coins that sell for far less, because the population of coins surviving in that extraordinary grade is just devastatingly small. When legendary auction houses like Heritage Auctions, the world's largest numismatic auction house by volume, or Stack's Bowers Galleries, put a top-graded 1973 Washington Quarter example into a major sale, the bidding activity is a live demonstration of exactly how seriously the collector community takes these coins, with opening bids frequently exceeded multiple times over, as determined collectors refuse to let a finest known example escape their registry sets. And the hammer prices recorded for PR70, DCAM, San Francisco proof examples, and for the rarest MS67 Plus. Wisdom dismissing these coins as common is dangerously and expensively wrong for anyone who cares about building a collection with genuine long-term value. So here is what you absolutely need to do right now. Before this video ends and before another day passes, go through every single coin in your collection, every jar of old change, every coin album you inherited, every estate lot you picked. Then examine them carefully under a good loupe or magnification for any signs of doubling on the date or motto. Check the mint mark for sharpness and any signs of repunching. Assess the luster and surface quality of uncirculated examples with brutal honesty. And if you find anything that looks exceptional, get it professionally graded immediately.